emergency and set a curfew as anti-ICE protests continue.
We reached a tipping point and declared a state of emergency and called for the curfew.
The downtown curfew runs from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. after ongoing violence and arrest. Protesters were again cleared from outside a federal building and the 101 freeway. R. Kelly's lawyers are asking President Trump to help free him, claiming prison officials conspired to have him killed. They're requesting home detention, saying his life is in danger. Kelly is serving 30 years for racketeering and sex trafficking. And the former girlfriend of Sean Diddy Combs, known as Jane, testified for a fifth day, claiming he watched as she and others were forced to sleep with men. She also accused him of abuse. Combs has pleaded not guilty to sex trafficking and other charges. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's now time for Let's Elevate, the Arnie and Kerry Show with Arnie Filko and Kerry Grant.
All right, good evening, everyone. Hello, New Orleans, on this Wednesday night. I'm Arnie Filko.
And I'm Kerry Grant. Good evening, everybody.
It is nice. Kerry and I are back together in studio.
Yes.
Wasn't sure about 3 o'clock. I thought we might have a repeat of yesterday, but the rain kind of stopped and looks like it's clearing out. And typical New Orleans
afternoon summer pattern.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Becomes nice. What about 6, 7 o'clock? And
right.
Of course, we're sitting in the studio, so we don't get to enjoy that nice weather until we're done. But we are happy to be in studio and to have all of you join us tonight. Really love to hear from you. 504-582-9422. You know, we spent a lot of time last night talking about Los Angeles and what's going on. And,
yes.
I don't know about you. I've been watching it the last couple nights, and I'm a little fatigued by it. First of all, the word riots is a bit of a exaggeration.
It's a stretch, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
that's not really what's happening in L.A. You know, there was a little bit of activity last night. New York had a little bit of activity.
Right.
But for the most part, you know, there are some people that were that were not peaceful protest. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, people were respecting the fact and trying very hard, not to get arrested and to, not have people, be able to justify and condemn that this was, violent protest. Yeah. And I think this has been a relatively good example of what the First Amendment allows for.
Yes, and I think that it's good that there has still been some restraint with the National Guard and the other people that have been involved who shouldn't be involved, because I do think that the LAPD and the LA Sheriff's Office and other people have been handling this pretty well. And, it's everybody's right to protest, and that's not as a First Amendment right. And as long as you do it in a way that doesn't cause confusion, I think that's what most people are doing.
Yeah.
And they're abiding by the curfew that's been put in place last night, and tonight it's going to be in place, and I think people are going home. So, it's not like they're trying to cause a riot,
I mean, the problem is even with 4 or 5 nights of protest and exercising your First Amendment, I don't know what's coming out of this. The reality is I don't see the Trump administration
stopping
off
what they're doing. Right.
I mean, I think it's still, business as usual. Maybe there'll be some help, but the reality is nothing wrong with protesting, nothing wrong with, exercising your rights and stating your thoughts. I just don't know that I see something tangible, where the administration is going to say, all right, we're only going to go after violent criminals. Yeah. We're going to leave everybody else alone. I just don't see that. And as we said last night, Kerry, the reason I don't see it is because I think, the politics of this really don't allow Trump to want to do something like that.
The thing I saw today that'll probably have more influence on the outcome of this event, not his policies, but this event, is that 45% of the nation is polling saying that they don't like what's going on with the calling out of the National Guard. So he being responsive to that will probably respond to that as well.
Yeah.
Well, the way I see it, he's stroking his ego.
Absolutely.
And he wants to come off as, quote unquote, the great white hope. The one that swooped in and saved everybody.
Right.
It's not the case here.
Right.
Well, I think we know it's not the case, but I think the politics of the people, he wants to look tough. He wants to look. This is a prelude to what we're going to see this weekend. When you're going to have military and tanks and the army and planes over the city of D.C.
It just sucks that it happens to fall on his birthday. It sucks.
It's such a coincidence.
Because he's going to find a way to flip that into, oh, it's for my birthday.
But it's Saturday night, and what people need to focus on, and it goes to what you said, Arnie, about what the outcome of these things are. What these things need to galvanize people about the immigration thing. I wish that this would galvanize lawyers across the country, all types of legal people, students, people who work in white shoe firms and everything, to get in there and fight for these people when they get wrongly arrested. And because they're going to need that more than anything else. Standing in the street is great, but it doesn't help me to get out of the clutches of ICE.
Well,
that's starting to happen, but I think that's what needs to happen.
I think you're starting to see some breakage of support. There was I can't remember her name, but she was a state senator from Florida. Yeah, I believe of Cuban descent.
Yes.
And very much pro-Trump. Okay, very much. And she basically came out and said, "Look, I supported, but I'm not in favor of this. This is not what I voted for. It's not what the community voted for. Violent criminals, okay, get them off the streets, get them out of the country with due process.
This is just a quota system.
Yeah.
This is not any. And now, and one thing that I think is going to impact other people, and these are the ways things like this get broken. They're going into the San Joaquin Valley, which is one of the bread baskets of America, where a lot of food is produced and taken out of the San Joaquin Valley and picked by people who they're going to get. So ICE is going into places now that are agricultural, and that will hurt everybody across the country, because when those goods are not even picked, they just rot.
Right.
So there'll be that issue of the stores we don't have avocados anymore. We don't. Whatever you like, they won't have, because that's where that comes from. Well, so that is the impact that we're going to start seeing that type of thing.
And I think that those are the kind of things. You look, inflation, the economy,
that
the
hurts
cost of
companies,
groceries.
big giant agribusinesses get hurt by that as well.
Yeah. Those are the things that may make a
move
difference.
The needle.
Okay,
they'll move the needle.
We will see. I think also beyond what's happening in California and Chicago and on the streets on immigration, Carrie, I get concerned about other stories that may not make the national headlines necessarily, but it shows where the country's going. And I pulled out this story as you know, a couple days ago, President Trump was at Fort Bragg, in North Carolina, addressing the military, and he was there to deliver a speech on the 250th anniversary of the Army.
Yeah.
But as I read the story and read what was happening, and you're going to add to the story,
yes.
It's the first time that I can remember where members of our armed forces were like fans at a football game.
Right.
I mean, this wasn't a, let's do an event to commemorate the Army. This was, let's do a typical Trump
political
rally.
Right.
Okay, political rally.
Right.
And, you had members of the military rah-rahing, and when Trump, started to bash Biden, they were rah-rahing. And I just found that disgusting. I mean, I have to tell you, and very dangerous.
Yes.
And then you told me a little bit more.
It's even worse. I mean, behind the scenes, what happened was to get the people to be in the audience, particularly behind Trump, because that's very visual. To do that, they actually hand-selected the people who were behind him. And not just hand-selected from, like you said, this battalion is going to be in the audience. They hand-selected the people by putting out a memo saying, don't come to this if you are opposed to President Trump's policies. They wanted people who were with his policies. They wanted it to be political, and they wanted to make sure you looked the part. They literally said in the memo, they wanted clean-cut, American-looking soldiers. Yeah. So, and it's what you said, Arnie, and all that really lends itself to is creating this cadre in the military that is just lost in something that military people are not supposed to be involved.
Well, when you're in the military, you swear allegiance to the commander in chief, okay,
And to the Constitution
and to the
United States.
Constitution
Right.
and the freedom and democracy. Candidly, President Biden was the commander in chief,
Right.
and it is, in my opinion, it's highly inappropriate for members of the media to be siding and yelling and rallying, against a president. Okay,
Right,
I mean
right.
that's not what our military's for. And if you look back in the history of the world and look at autocratic societies and governments, one of the first things that happen is the military gets corrupted,
Right.
and that is something that we just can't stand for. Here.
Was very frightening about it, as you said, about the making digs at Biden and people cheering or whatever. Joe Biden didn't cut veterans benefits, which these young people are going to need someday. Joe Biden isn't trying to undermine parts of the military that are strong. The issues of giving more money to the military budget were about research and development and mostly paying companies for weaponry.
Yeah,
not people.
Kerry, we got a caller.
Sure.
Let's go to line one here, Mr. Elmore. How are you tonight?
Hey, man. Hey, brother. Hey, brother. How you
Hello.
doing today, man? That was a pleasure. How you doing today?
All right.
We're
how are
great,
you?
thank you.
Oh, man, I just thought it was very disrespectful, disgraceful, because when you serve your country like I did, I had the
Yeah.
pleasure of you and Kerry and other citizens paying me. That's who we work for, American people.
Yes.
And I thought it was a total disgrace, very inappropriate, because when you serve, when I served my country, I wasn't against no president publicly.
Mhm.
I kept it to myself because I served the American people. Now, once again, I can say who I didn't like.
Mhm.
Right.
But what I was saying, I mean, out of respect, we serve the American people, man. We don't serve a presidency.
Yes.
president,
Absolutely, and that's why some of the stuff that we're seeing, I mean, it goes against all precedent.
Right.
And really, Mr. Elmore, it's really dangerous. I mean, I don't want to make this comparison of the Nazis in World War II, but when you look at the history, when Hitler came to power, became chancellor, one of the things he did was try to bring military control.
Right.
And the reality is, and you're right. I mean, we honor you because you served this country in
correct.
order
Yes.
to protect us.
Yes.
And in order to protect the things that Kerry and I can say every night on
That's
radio, you don't necessarily, you serve under the commander in chief, but you can disagree with him, but you do it in a respectful way. And a rally like this at a military base that looks more like a rally at a UFC venue.
Right.
Where you're rah-rahing and you're saying the former president was this and terrible and that. I mean, I can't ever think of that happening with any president, Democrat or Republican.
Nobody ever brought that.
I've never known no other president. The thing that bothers me, and I have mentioned it to you, Kerry, before.
Mhm.
What's so amazing about the Republican Party, the West, is they were so holy and down and American flag.
Yes.
Waving, they were so conservative in the values they think. But now all of a sudden, you're turning your way against some conservative values. I mean, how
true.
did you get away from your conservative values?
Yes, it's not patriotism to be partisan. That's not
No.
patriotism.
No, that's right.
No,
That's
either
right.
way, and no, we wouldn't want this if Barack Obama was doing it. So
No,
it's not
right.
the case.
We would
I
be
mean,
condemning this if this
condemning
was a
that as well.
Democratic president.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And
Well,
I know
Mr.
you
Elmo,
would. And you're absolutely right. I know that if Obama or any Democrat would do the same thing, you'd be against them too. And I would too.
Can you
Yeah,
imagine the
yeah.
outrage that would
Absolutely.
be? Mr. Emo, thanks for calling. I
Thank
got to go
you.
to another caller here. Have a good evening.
All right, buddy.
All right, bye.
Pleasure. Yeah, you too, buddy.
All right.
Miss Pamela, how are you tonight?
Well, good evening to both of you. How are you all? I'm
All right.
good.
Good evening.
We're good. We're good. How's everything? What's on your mind tonight?
What's on my mind is, okay, they are always talking about the Democrats and Biden and this and that and the third. But wait a minute. What about Congress? The House? I mean, they control everything. Now tell me this. I may be wrong, and I want to understand. What the hell is going on with the Republicans as far as who is going to stop him and stand up and have some cojones. How about that one?
The $1,000 question, Miss Pamela. The answer so far is an easy answer, and it's nobody.
Nobody.
No Republican member of Congress. And again, maybe there's one every once in a while that doesn't like things. But for the most part, the majority in the House, the majority in the Senate of Republicans have basically just, agreed with whatever this administration.
Right.
And it's
for their own political game.
For their own political game, and we've talked about it. The reason
that's what it's all about.
The reason is largely political. These folks do not want to get on the wrong side of the president.
They want to keep their jobs.
They don't want to have an opponent.
Why are you scared of that dude? He ain't scary. He's just ugly.
Yeah.
Well, they're afraid politically of Trump basically putting up a candidate against them that is to their right, political right. And, and a lot of them are in swing districts, okay? So they've got to balance that versus, other things. Mm-hmm. But the reality, we can say this. None of them have shown any backbone.
No.
And, I'm going to give you one issue that I'm very passionate about, and it's a very easy issue. You have a madman sitting in Moscow. You have an evil dictator, okay, that is killing literally dozens of people every day in Ukraine. And our president has, instead of taking the right position, which is supporting Ukraine, continues to support Russia, puts Ukraine and Russia on the same platform, and refuses to do what's right.
And nobody,
and you don't see any member of Congress
nobody who stood
doing
up,
anything.
The ones who stood up before with Biden, with Obama, or whoever, they are not standing up against Trump. The very people who came out with this same thing, like Lindsey Graham, who's a Republican, was staunchly behind the Ukraine, and now he says nothing.
And Lindsey Graham, yeah, he's right. Lindsey Graham went over there a couple weeks ago. He's been very much supportive of Ukraine. But you know what has happened since he got back? Nada. Nothing has happened.
Right.
And it's like, what are you waiting for? I mean, honestly, I truly am starting to believe. You remember those rumors about the hotel room in Moscow?
Absolutely.
I'm starting to believe that there may be some truth to things like that.
Definitely
because
something.
How can an American president abandon democracy when we are supposed to be the country supporting democracy?
Right.
So I don't know. It's a good question, Miss Pamela. We're going to wait. Hopefully, at some point here.
I don't think we have time to wait, y'all. I don't think we have time to wait. Because see what's getting ready to happen? You think it's bad now? What's getting ready to happen? It's not going to be good. Because I can tell you one thing that I feel in my spirit. This too shall pass. And guess what? Karma is a
So what, Miss Pamela? Pamela, what do you think? What do you think we, and when I say we, good citizens, like-minded citizens that want to preserve, democracy and the type of country? What is it that we can do when the Republicans control basically all three branches of government? What is it that we could do, in your opinion?
Well, I think we need to pray a little harder, stand fast, and sit back and watch, because they're going to implode. They're going to implode on their own.
Yeah, I agree.
They're doing it to themselves.
Well, that's true. That's true. We need more Elon Musk moments.
Yes.
And look,
no, next you need more Miss Pamela moments, because if I get up in there,
we're going to put you out front. I will say this: we got to go to a break, but that's why we're really not that far away from midterm elections, and the Democrats need to get their game in order here.
Stuff together.
And
challenge
we
gotta win at least the House next year.
That's right, baby. That's right. Well, thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome. Call back. We appreciate it.
All right.
We're going to go to a quick break. Be back on the other side.
All right. Bye-bye.
Get in on the conversation. at 504-582-9422.
Real issues, real talk, real solutions. Miss an episode of The Reality Check? You can catch every episode anytime. Search WBOK Media on your favorite podcast app to tap the bold commentary, real-time reactions, and powerful perspectives from the people and leaders shaping our city. Download, share, and rate it 5 stars because the real ones always stay informed.
On the next edition of The Way Forward, we'll talk about making the most of a useless college degree. Plus, I'll share what's good, the Go Forward message, and tell you what you need to know about good stuff in the community. Join me Saturday at 3 p.m. It's The Way Forward with Eddie Francis here on 1230 a.m. or streaming live at WBOK1230.com and the Play Ode app. On WBOK, what New Orleans is talking about.
That's right. It's party time each and every Sunday night at 7 p.m. on WBOK. It's the Throwback Throwdown with DJ Wick as he brings you the best in old school from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the early 2Ks. Plus, the party goes to another level at 9 p.m. with the Throwback Throwdown Party Mix to round out the night. It's the Throwback Throwdown Sunday nights at 7 p.m. on WBOK and on the World Wide Web at WBOK1230.com.
Missed a show? Want to hear that guest everyone's talking about? WBOK is now streaming on all your favorite podcast apps. Just search WBOK Media, hit download, share with a friend, and don't forget to rate your favorite shows 5 stars, because when our voices are heard, our impact grows.
WBOK, online at WBOK1230.com.
The Arnie and Carrie Show with Arnie Philco and Carrie Grant.
All right, we are back.
We're back.
504-582-9422. We're going to finish up kind of our federal discussion, talk a little bit of local in a few minutes. But, man, there's just so many nutso things happening, you know.
Yeah.
Our health had, fired the entire vaccine board.
Right. And it's replacing it with people he chose. It's like,
right. He said it was biased.
Oh, yeah, it's biased, but it's not biased now with his crew.
So, if you're worried about measles or COVID or
get a
flu,
good doctor and get a shot.
Exactly.
Don't listen to anything coming out of Washington.
And then it is not only Washington, Kerry. We got nutsos here. I mean, I saw this story because, the legislature tomorrow at 5 o'clock has to adjourn.
Yeah.
So, they're passing bills in the last minute. And
yes.
I mean, here's a bill. Here's the headline. How do I pronounce it?
Intervect.
Ivermectin.
Yeah.
Ivermectin. The bill heads to the governor's desk for signing. The legislation would allow this drug would allow pharmacies to sell this without prescription. All right. So we remember this from the COVID days.
Yes.
Because you had a lot of people, if you remember some of those White House press conferences.
Right.
Remember those?
Right.
And Dr. Fauci is like, oh my God,
okay,
seriously?
Don't touch this stuff.
And what's scary about this is Dr. Ralph Abraham. If you don't know him, he's our Surgeon General for the state.
Right.
He's the official doctor for the state of Louisiana. He supported this bill that allows farmers to sell ivermectin, an anti-parasitic drug that has gained in popularity since COVID to adults 18 and over. A prescription from the individual doctor is no longer necessary. Now, all right, that sounds fine, except you got to dig a little bit about this drug.
Right.
Well, this is a drug basically given
for
to horses
right.
and animals. And
killed some people during
some people along the way. And you've had a number of oncologists testify against this.
Yes.
Who said this is witch doctor medicine, okay? Have there been a couple cases where maybe somebody got a good result? And, of course, that could happen in almost any situation.
Right.
I mean, you have that in herbal drugs and other things. But this is where our state legislature is heading, that we're going to allow for the legality of a drug that doctors all over are testifying against it. And, and we're doing this because of the, quote, freedom to be able to,
right.
basically put whatever you want in your body. I just don't see this. I'm sorry.
No.
I want to be protected. I want good
Yes.
health. I want good medicine based on
right.
data.
Yes.
Not some craziness that because a lawmaker, thinks this is a good idea. This bill was sponsored by Republican Mike Fessy out of Homa. I don't know, Kerry. I'll be honest. I'm a big fan. You know who the best doctor is in the state of Louisiana?
Who's that?
Is Jennifer Avegno from the city of New Orleans.
Absolutely.
You worked with her.
I love Jennifer.
She is.
Jennifer saved this city from COVID. People don't understand
Absolutely
that. I was
right.
there with her when we started to understand what that was, and she was the one who was about, let's do it this way. Let's give people straight information. Let's track it. Everything that worked out and saved lives, because it was really out of hand here, because Mardi Gras created a super spreader event when we didn't even know what super spreader was.
Right.
So she absolutely is one of the best public health officials I've ever run across in 30 years of being out there in the world.
Totally agree with you. Yeah. And totally agree. It wasn't easy for her to take the position in COVID.
No,
she
not
did.
at all. Not at all.
And the
but
reality
she tracked
is,
the science completely from
Yes.
day one.
Yes, because they
From day
started
one.
to look at like wastewater.
Yeah, all
and-
kinds of
yeah.
things. I mean, she tracked the science and could tell you there would be a shutdown on this day, and that's exactly what happened.
So, Dr. Avegno, if you are listening to this show tonight,
Please
you have
say
a free.
something.
Please call in and tell us that we aren't crazy. Look, if you're going to pass this, and again, I know there are people that feel that they should be able to do medically with what they want for their own health. At least require a doctor to prescribe it.
Yeah,
okay?
let's just go grab it off the counter.
Yeah, so
or take bleach.
I don't know.
Or take bleach.
Well, that's yeah.
Well, look,
we remember those
And then
days
when he
too.
said, "Well, why don't we shoot ultraviolet rays into the
inside
bloodstream?"
you.
Really?
Yeah. I almost missed those days of those press conferences. They were at a time when we couldn't leave our house. That
Well,
was the most entertainment we
Arnie,
had.
what I'm going to say is I hope that you're wrong about that, like the lady said about karma, because with crazy Robert Kennedy and everything, we may get back to the days of being on lockdown and have to watch crazy press conferences for entertainment.
Yes.
Because we're getting mighty close to witch doctors
Yeah.
literally being the main medical people in the country.
Well, Kerry, let's change a little bit. Okay,
Yes.
let's talk local. There were a couple really interesting surveys that came out yesterday and today. One survey, I think both of them were done by Ron Fosho, who's a noted pollster in our
Right.
community. One of the surveys involved people's reaction to the NOPD.
Right.
And I think not surprisingly, the numbers were very positive.
Yes.
There's still work to be done. We still have crime. We still have
Yes.
issues. But I think people basically expressed the opinion. And as they polled this thing, they tried very hard, as I understand it, to make sure that the percentage of people responding correlated with the racial demographics of our
population,
city.
yeah. Which is a good sign for that poll.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, you have to do that in
Yeah.
order to have a legitimate poll. And, I think it shows that people like what's going on from the crime standpoint. Obviously, the break in the jail is not something people are thrilled
Right.
about. And hopefully we can, get these two, captured and back.
But because people are most affected and touched by the police and see police as the public safety agency, the primary public safety agency, is good to see them being seen in a positive light, because they are doing a much better job and they are creating some good results that people appreciate.
Yeah, there were 800 residents interviewed in this telephone survey, and 54% said the city is safe, very safe, or fairly safe. Most approved of having the state police and Troop Noble involved.
Yeah.
60% said added policing was working well. So, I think those are not so surprising. And even on a racial standpoint, 50%, 57% of the sample was African American, 35% was white. The only one I have to say that didn't fare well under this survey was Sheriff Hudson.
Yes.
And, I guess that's not all that surprising either,
No.
given this was taken
during that period.
during that time period of the escape. So that's good news. Now, let me give some news that on the second survey that I don't think is very good news. And that is there was a second survey done with a lot of things. So we start with the question, is the city headed in the right or wrong direction? Right direction, 28%.
Right.
Wrong direction, 65%.
Right.
Now, my thoughts on that are, and again, I know this is going to sound negative against the mayor, but it is a reaction to the mayor, okay? Because when you look at the mayor's numbers, and they did this to every elected official, the mayor's approval numbers under this survey are 27%, 62% disapproving, basically tracking exactly, do you feel the city's going in the right direction? City council, 47% approved, 36% disapproved. That was pretty where much I would thought it would be. I think this community largely looks at the city council in a favorable light.
And they have some issues with some of the things that they're doing. Some people think there's some overreach, And,
there is,
and there
there's
is
a perception of that.
But overall, that's not a bad number.
And I think if you had a more popular mayor, those city council members, those numbers would be lower.
Yes.
And they would be criticized for being so combative with a popular mayor.
Right.
They're working with a mayor that is not popular.
Right.
And therefore, a lot of people see it as important that the legislative branch, just like we talk about Congress taking on the president, they'd like the fact that another group
Somebody
is taking her on.
I agree.
So I think that was interesting. The police chief, 53% approval, 26% disapproval. Again, I don't think anything surprising. This was a little surprising to me. District Attorney Jason Williams, 51% approved, 29% disapprove. I would have thought that the disapproval numbers might be a little higher than that. Just only because I think, and I'm a fan of Jason. I think he's done an excellent job. But when you're the district attorney, you get caught in the middle of so many other things, law enforcement.
But I think he's positioned himself well and made it clear his role and his take on working with other agencies as well to help reduce crime. And I think he's proven that doing things in a kind of a proper manner and not just charging everybody with everything and really looking at these cases, I think he's given a real different take on that. So I think that's coming through.
Yeah.
I think he's done great messaging about his role.
Well, I will say this. The one thing I really give the district attorney credit for, he came into office with an agenda of progressive politics.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, following trends and supporters and where some of his funding had come from. And he didn't flip 180 degrees. I mean, I think the district attorney is still fair-minded. I think he still leans more progressive. But he also went a little further to the right. And he realized that the sentiment of the community, especially when we were at a time, not today, a time of carjackings and murder. I mean, the district attorney and his mother got carjacked.
Right.
They did. In fact, they just got the defendants just pled guilty to that. He, to his credit, moved with where the public sentiment was.
Right.
And I think a lot of people respected that, okay?
Yeah, he showed that you can not so much be wrong, because people always want to say it's wrong, but that you can change your position because of the circumstances and to do what the public wants. And I think sometimes politicians, like we just got through talking about, forget that the public is who you work for. The title public servant is you serve the public, not you serve yourself.
Yeah.
So I think he was very good about seeing what was going on and saying, I should be where they are.
Yeah.
And I think those numbers reflect.
And I think it's important. I think the district attorney is one of those offices. It's really important that you don't come in and be totally on one side. And, I don't think that's why people put you in office. I think people want you. I mean, look, as you know, Kerry, because you worked in government for years, I mean, to keep a community safe, it takes a full team.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
District attorney, public
Absolutely.
defender,
Yes,
judges,
yes.
NOPD, sheriff.
Yes.
And I think the community wants to see all of them working together in concert.
And that goes to some of these other numbers that are coming up.
Yeah, well, and let me keep going because, they're not all that good. We talked about Sheriff Hudson. I mean, those numbers are very low, 18% approval, 62% disapproval. Then you get to judges. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very
Yes,
interesting.
very interesting.
Criminal court judges, 31% approved, 38% disapprove. Juvenile court judges, 21% approved, 43, double disapprove. I mean, there's clearly unhappiness right now with how our judicial system is working here.
Yeah. That's coming through those numbers very clearly, that people feel like the judges, unlike the DA, the judges aren't taking the same approach to things, maybe being too lenient or seen as being too lenient. I think a lot of people are very frustrated with the actual judicial court system about the length of time things take, too. I mean, it's like we were talking about with the DA's case. I mean, something happens a couple of years ago and then it gets to trial 2 years later or whatever. That kind of slow justice doesn't serve anybody.
Right.
I mean, it's just, some of the guys that escaped were in prison waiting for trial for years.
Well, and the sheriff has made this point. I mean, you have 1,400 plus people in the jail, which is
supposed to be a pre-adjudication,
200 more
right.
than what the city council mandated, and even more, than what they really thought it was going to be. And part of that, a lot of those are people waiting trial.
Pre-adjudicated, yes.
Yeah. So,
and that's bad.
Yeah.
And the juvenile thing, with all the issues happening with the Juvenile Justice Center and with juveniles being the tip of the spear about crime in this city, I mean, I know that's why that number is pretty high.
Right. We're going to talk, when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about the mayor's race because we got some interesting numbers in this poll on that. But also, just before we go to break, the issues were what are the important issues facing our city? Crime and public safety. Probably not surprisingly, the most important.
Yes.
Street repair and maintenance, second. Low-income housing, third. Drainage and flooding, and then followed by homelessness, climate change, and other miscellaneous topics.
And one you skipped over earlier was the one about the Sewage and Water Board, because they're at 14%. And I think the Sewage and Water Board, of all the entities in New Orleans, is always going to be low until they just get their basic act together.
Yeah. Well, 79% disapprove of the work of the Sewage and Water.
Right.
I mean, think about that.
That's a
4
huge
in every 5 citizens. And, look, you worked with our former head of the Sewage and Water Board. I think a lot of people had great respect for him. He had a lot of technical ability.
Yeah.
He's gone. There's an effort, as we know, to combine the Public Works with the Sewage and Water Board on some of the part of. I'm not exactly sure where that is anymore. That's been pretty quiet.
Yeah, I haven't heard much about it.
Yeah, it was. Remember, there were monetary issues, how they were going to fund that.
Yes.
But I think people. I'll be honest. I think people discussed it. Even when you had a rain like yesterday, and it came down hard. I mean, some of the streets. I mean, were impassable for a period of time.
Yeah.
We got to figure this out. I mean, you can't be an American city and have the type of drainage that we have. I mean, people get disgusted with that. They get disgusted with Entergy, because of what we saw a couple of weeks ago on Memorial Day weekend. I mean, those are things that if you live, I'll be honest, if you live in Chicago or Atlanta or Houston, you generally don't run into issues like that.
And I think that what people are saying is very clear to me is that, and I thought this about some of the issues with the jail. The jail is 10 years old, but the sheriff's been in office for 5 years plus. It's like, the Sewage and Water Board thing has been going on for a long time. And some of these issues, you can't just keep coming back to every rainstorm and saying, we're working on the power plant, we're working on this, we're working on that. At some point, just because of time and space, you need to be finished and something needs to be a better result.
Yes.
And I think about what you said, in some of the areas where we all know, where it floods all the time in the street or wherever, if those drains are clogged, if the pipes underneath them are clogged, how many times does it have to do catastrophic flooding from any type of rain before you say, man, I ought to focus on that one? Then at least people wouldn't call me about that anymore. It's like, just let that one keep flooding. Just let it keep flooding. It just drives people crazy. It really does. It really does.
And, we've lost 10% of our population.
And that can't not be part of it.
Part of that 10% is related to the fact that basic services aren't provided the way people want them provided.
Right.
And, this is, as you and I have talked about previously, this is going to be a huge issue in the mayor's race, okay? Yes. And because we just can't keep going in that direction.
Right.
I will tell you one interesting thing that I'm our NOPD chiefs numbers are very strong, okay?
Yes.
But generally, when you have a new mayor come in,
yes,
that mayor's top hire is the superintendent of New Orleans Police. It's going to be really interesting to see how that develops. I
agree.
I think the majority of New Orleanians would like to see our current chief continue. Mm-hmm. But funny thing happens when you get into the second floor of City Hall.
Yes.
It's called POWER. And sometimes, and you've seen it, I definitely have seen it, sometimes that power becomes the priority versus maybe what the right decision could be.
And I think that what's going to happen, too, is just with a person like that, upper-level person like that, popular or not, you have to go through a process with that person, and you're going to probably go through a process of extreme hiring in this next go-around of the top-level people. We've heard talk about city manager-type CAOs and all that kind of stuff, and tremendous changes to salaries and all, which mean nationwide searches. We have one of the highest-paid police chiefs for a city this size that there is. So it's not just about pay, but it's about what you're expecting from that person and loyalty and a whole lot of other things. Like you said, when you get into that mode, it's going to be, you may have to apply for that job again, is what I'm driving.
Listen, this happens in the private sector every
all
day.
The time. Yeah.
We have a new CEO comes on and the number two person,
everybody.
Yeah, the number two person could be an absolutely talented, terrific person, but the new CEO wants his own person.
Yes.
So that's why I say I think this is going to be really interesting to watch.
Very interesting.
I think a lot of the business groups are going to be campaigning very hard for Chief Kirkpatrick to stay on.
Sure.
But this will be interesting, and I'm sure this topic will come up. This will be a question in the debates and everything as to what a mayoral candidate might do.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. 504-582-9422. Love to hear from you in the last few minutes. We are going to come back and talk about some interesting numbers in the mayor's race.
Yes.
That was pulled. We'll be back in a minute.
Back in a moment.
WBOK. Online at WBOK1230.com.
Hey, WBOK 1230 family. This is Angie from the Sincerely Angie podcast. Make sure you're tuning in every Saturday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. to Conversations with Ron Richardson, where the conversations are all the way live and informative. Conversations with Ron Richardson every Saturday on WBOK 1230 a.m.
On Auto Trends with JeffCars.com, here's a snippet of some of what we cover. GPS pioneer Gladys West.
We worked long hours computing trajectory orbits and satellite orbits, trying to get the data and everything correct enough.
Auto analyst Mark Bland.
14 new vehicle deals that happen in this country out of every 100 that women don't have a fingerprint on.
To tune in, check out Auto Trends with JeffCars.com. Saturdays at 4 p.m. on WBOK, what New Orleans is talking about.
Trying to grow your business or increase traffic to your location? We can help. WBOK 1230 AM has a number of solutions that will meet your individual needs. Give one of our consultants a call today at 504-582-9420 or email us at info@WBOK1230.com. And remember, an investment with WBOK is an investment in our community. Call today.
New Orleans, are you ready for a voice that says what you're thinking? Who that, you might ask? Arrington Gavin. That's right, I'm your guy, host of The Arrington Gavin Show, giving you so much filled with bold opinions, real conversations, and zero sugarcoating. We're going to be diving into the issues that matter, politics, pop culture, and all the above, unfiltered and unafraid. Catch The Arrington Gavin Show weeknights from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Fridays, right here on WBOK, what New Orleans is talking about.
Uptown, downtown, Wherever you are, keep it locked in to WBOK.
The Arnie and Carrie Show with Arnie Philco and Carrie Grant.
Okay, we are back for the last 10 minutes, and we're going to talk, Mayor, just really quickly. Carrie, he also polled the upcoming sheriff election.
Yes.
And the numbers were very interesting. Susan Hudson, 13%. Edwin Shorty, 9%. Michelle Woodfork, 32%. I don't think they polled
for Judge Julian.
Judge Parker.
Yeah. Julian Parker.
Yeah. And this is the number that jumped out to me. Don't know, 46%. You know, I think what it suggests is, you know, interim chief Woodfork is clearly the front runner at this point.
Right.
But, you know, she's at 32% and a don't know 46%. It is going to be really important for her in the next 3 months here to reintroduce herself to the community. You know, she was the interim police chief for a period of time.
Right.
Many people give her credit for starting a lot of the
reforms that are in place today.
But the reality is the police chief, interim police chief, is not somebody that just the average person knows.
Right.
So I think, you know, I would think she's going to probably get the lion's share of the money on this race. She's going to need to go on TV. She's going to need to introduce herself and raise that number from 32 and decrease the don't know number, you know, from the 40s.
Yeah, by a lot. That's very clear because it's right now, if you look at it just on the face of it, it's a wide open race because if anybody could grab a majority of that 46%, they'd be the front.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, it just, you know, so that race will change, I'm sure, pretty soon.
It will. It will. And
very soon.
I mean, we're still, you know, we're still 3 months away.
Yeah.
Qualifying is not that long away. It's a month away.
Yeah. And I think that's when things will really start kicking
because it
in,
has been on every race, the mayor's race as well.
Pretty quiet.
It has been so quiet. I mean, it's hard to, you know, it's just hard to believe that, you know, I know all the candidates are out there. They're doing events. They're doing fundraising.
Yeah.
They're doing the stuff, but you haven't really seen it ramp up. There's no TV ads. There's no debates yet or anything.
I haven't even heard any radio ads or anything. That's just kind of, you know, more passive about what I'm doing.
And probably a good idea. I mean, you save your money right now.
Yeah. A lot of people are doing
street signs.
A lot of people are doing free media and street signs. That's what I'm seeing. There's social media and that type of thing.
Now, the mayor's race is really interesting. Again, I don't know it's that surprising. Helena Moreno, 47%. Oliver Thomas, 22%. Arthur Hunter, 9%. Don't know, 22%. Couple things that I take from this. Number one, the don't know number is relatively low, meaning people know these candidates.
Yeah.
I think they've at least formed some initial impression of who they like, who they think would do the best job. You know, these are not unknown candidates. I mean, you have the president of the city council. You have a sitting city council member for years. Judge Hunter is somebody people, you know, I would say Judge Hunter people don't know that well. His numbers at 9%, to me, are not surprising because I think I really like Judge Hunter. I didn't know him that well. The more I've met him, he's a very decent guy and has such an interesting background.
Yes, he
as
does.
a judge, a police officer,
a prosecutor. He's got a great resume. I mean, I think he's just one of those people need to get to know better.
Yeah,
you know, just
I think it's going to be challenging for him to. You know, I have told anybody that ever listened. You know, had he wanted to run for councilman at large in one of the seats, I think he would have been a really formidable candidate.
Yeah.
I think this is not a negative on him. It's just he's running in a race
that has
with two really well-known.
Right. And better finance
and better finance
at this moment. Yeah.
But he definitely, I mean, look, and I, you know, you and I are talking politics. That's what we do on radio. We are making, you know, we're not making predictions tonight.
No.
People need to go vote who they want to vote for.
Nothing is in stone.
But he is probably more of a spoiler as to whether there ends up being a runoff or not in the mayor's race. I will say this. These are pretty strong numbers for Councilmember Moreno. I mean, 47% at this stage puts her close to winning outright. Okay? Again, these numbers change, or a poll is simply a snapshot in time.
Anything,
until you get to debates and You have candidates one-on-one talking.
Anything can happen.
Anything could happen. But look, we've seen finance reports. We know Councilmember Moreno is way out ahead of everybody. I will say this: Councilmember Thomas has done an excellent job fundraising.
Yes.
I think people were surprised by the numbers. He's gaining support in the community. It's going to be interesting. I think this race goes to a runoff only because you have a third candidate who's pretty strong.
I agree.
But you never know. And the question to me in the runoff is going to be, I'm just going to say it, how racial does a race like this get? Yeah. You were around. I was certainly around because I ran in that race in 2006. Mm-hmm. I mean, Ray Nagin ran on a racial platform. Yeah. Okay. We all remember Chocolate City.
Yes.
But, he and I know his campaign people. I mean, I've talked to them. I'm friends with them. They made the decision that they had to go in that direction in order to win that race.
Yeah.
And he prevailed. I mean, it was we can agree or disagree ethically if something like that is the right thing to do to a city, and does it divide a city? But politically, it was probably the only way he was going to get reelected, and the way he did. And I sense that we're headed in that direction. I hope not. I really hope not, but I sense we are.
I think you're right. Obviously, it could go in that direction. I think the real answer to it is some of the other numbers and some of the practicality that you and I both see from being around politics for a long time. The issues facing the city kind of transcend race. So the things that people really want to see you talk about in this race have nothing to do with race. I mean, it's really going to be about, can I manage this thing and make the trains run on time? Literally, it's that kind of race.
Your point is supported by some of the other poll numbers that people are looking at flooding. They're looking at street infrastructure.
They want you to tell them that sewage and water board that's at 14%. How do I get that to 51% on your watch?
Right.
How do you go? You're the president of the board. How are you going to actually deliver?
And really, what you're saying is whether you're from New Orleans East or the Ninth Ward or Uptown,
everybody
wants the same things.
Everybody wants the same thing in the city. Everybody wants, it's like you said, safety, cleanliness, economic development. Everybody wants literally the same items to be taken care of. And I think that what I'm seeing from people, like you said, Arnie, is right now people are saying, we're not really as concerned about what your skin tone is, but can you do the job? And part of the issue there, I think, also has to do with the current situation, because you see somebody who's kind of abandoned the job. And I think that people are like, we want somebody who's not going to do that.
No, I think that is really,
and that's
really
more
true.
of an argument than anything else.
But I also have to say, in reality and looking at politics, we're talking on June 11th.
No, I agree.
When we get to October 11th,
it could be anything.
Or in a runoff in November.
It could be anything.
We've seen this in almost every political race.
Yes.
It turns from policy to personality or other factors.
Yes.
And you and I have said this before, and we're going to keep saying it, because I think we're blessed right now to have several really good candidates.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't about race to me. I think the judge is terrific. We just said that.
Yeah.
I think Oliver Thomas is a good person, and he and I talked, and I told him, anybody that wants to attack him for what happened to him, we're going to strongly push back on that, because it's not the right thing to do.
No.
Okay. And I think Council President Moreno also has done a great job in Baton Rouge and on the council. So I think we're blessed to have some really good candidates. Right. And I'm going to get some popcorn. I'm glad I'm not running.
Yes.
And it gives us a chance to really evaluate these folks.
And they're going to have to come sit in our hot seat and talk to us directly, too.
Fun?
That's what we want.
I used to be so afraid to go on Norman Robinson's hot seat. It was the most petrified I've ever been. So this is going to be the Carrie and Arnie hot seat going forward here.
We're going to do that.
We're going to
get ready. Get ready, guys.
Yeah, get ready. All right. This has been fun tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Carrie and I will be back tomorrow night, Thursday at 6 o'clock. And again, would love to hear your thoughts on everything going on. Have a really great evening.
Good night, everybody.